3D movies have been gaining popularity recently with movies such as Avatar, Hugo, and most recently, Star Wars. With 3D gaining popularity and new technology coming out for 3D such as games, phones, and TVs, it might seem like something relatively new, but that's not the case. Believe it or not, 3D imaging was first created back in the 1840s. It was invented by Charles Wheatstone by placing two images inside a stereoscope, which converged the images into one, giving the illusion of 3D. It wasn't until the 1890s, however, that the first patent for 3D motion pictures was filed. It was filed by William Green, and his idea was a machine that rushes two strips of film in synchronization. It was successful but ignored because it was impractical for large theater viewing. In 1915, Anaglyph Films made its first major impact when Edwin Porter and William Waterland showed some of their test films to audiences in New York. Anaglyph films are films which had left and right images superimposed over one another, with red and cyan or red and green tinted images, as the audience would wear tinted glasses to block out one image from one eye and the other image from the other, giving the illusion of 3D. In 1922, William Cassidy and Lawrence Hammond created an alternative method for 3D films called teleview, which is when a single strip of film projects the left and right images one after another and the audience looks through a viewing machine which opens and closes shutters in front of each eye in sync with the images that appear on the screen. Due to the Great Depression, 3D slows down in the late 20s and early 30s and doesn't pick back up until 1936, when Edward Land demonstrates 3D imaging using polarized light. This is achieved by two images being projected in sync on a silver screen through polarizing filters, which the filters are then separated by polarized glasses worn by each audience member, giving the illusion of 3D. Due to World War II, there was another slope in 3D film production. It wasn't until after, in 1952 and 1953, that 3D had its golden era as an invention of the TV threatened cinema. The first movie to kickstart the golden era was Born a Devil, which used polarized method instead of anaglyph method. Other movies released during this time are Warner Bros.' House of Wax, which was the first 3D film to use stereo sound, and Kiss Me Kate. When 3D popularity started to die down, the last 3D film to be shown during the golden era was The Return of the Creature. In the 1970s, Stereovision 3D is introduced, which is when two images are squashed side by side and then the lens in front of the projector stretches the images out and overlays them in widescreen. In the 1980s, 3D films bloom again thanks to IMAX. The re-release of House of Wax and Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder inspired a new wave of films such as Jaws 3D, Amityville 3D, and Friday the 13th Part 3. Then, the 3D craze dies down once again for the next few decades, and it isn't until 2009 when James Cameron releases Avatar that 3D has its huge comeback. With 3D big again, it seems like every studio jumps on the 3D bandwagon, creating every film in 3D or re-releasing old films in 3D such as Star Wars. Since then, other companies such as Panasonic, HTC, and Nintendo have jumped on the 3D bandwagon, creating 3D TVs, games, and phones.